Welcome, reanimated fans, to this week's podcast. I'm AJ Conrad, as always, with my intrepid co-host, Stuart Tiffin. Hello, Stuart.
Hello.
And we're the dynamic duo again. Kyle is not going to guest star in this, but we thank him for his awesome insights. And I will admit, while watching the movie that we're going to talk about today, which is Sinners, Ryan Coogler's Sinners, I was thinking about some of his comments and thoughts on it. So I'll admit to you, I was like, oh man, I kind of wish Kyle was joining us for this one. But we are going to be talking about it, which I'm pretty excited to do. Before we get into that, we have a couple of tiny news tidbits. A new trailer is out for an Australian film, Forgive Us, and it looks pretty good, actually.
Yeah, I was having some trouble with the accents. That's not like the broadest Australian accents you're hearing in this trailer, right?
Yeah, I did not have issues with it, but
I mean, like placing it at first.
okay. Yeah, I guess. But it looks there's some there like at least again, one of the only things I worry sometimes because I felt like this showed an awful lot.
Yeah.
I actually prefer trailers that show a little less so that it's more exciting. But I will say I'm definitely I'm gonna check this one out. And I didn't see exactly when this was supposed to be released. Is it already, or is it coming? It's coming?
July 11th.
Yeah, so it's pretty soon.
Yeah.
So it's exciting. Any other comments about that? But,
It's a well produced. It looks like it's got a high production value, and not too many recognizable faces, and it looks like it's going to be pretty disturbing. Yeah.
oh gosh, it's sorry, it's Forgive Us All.
All. Forgive
Sorry.
us all.
And it's New Zealand, not Australian. Oh, I'm gonna get it for that one. Oof.
Oof. Then it's even less of a broad accent. My
Yeah, well,
goodness.
that would explain it. So, um, but it's all filmed in New Zealand. Shows you how much research I did before this particular podcast today.
Like one
Uh,
of these actors, one of these bad guys is has been a regular in Marvel movies as a member of Hydra. I don't remember his name,
mm,
but he plays tough guys a lot.
yeah. I saw a couple of familiar faces. But the quality looked great. And just generally there were some really kind of cool shots and scary shots. So I'm pretty excited to check this one out. Our roster is growing longer. It's kind of we have a lot of content
Yeah.
and can take in. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah. Yeah. One of these days we'll have to start watching City of the Dead City,
Yeah.
whatever the hell it's called.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know that we need to get to it yet. This is definitely something that I would probably put in front of that. I would also say this has definite like a Western feel to it, for sure.
Hmm.
And apparently it was filmed in the Queenstown Lake District. And that's all, so it's all filmed in New Zealand, and I'm very excited. I'm excited to check this out once we eventually get to it. In other news, our much awaited 28 years later. Basically, the pre-sales for this it is basically broken records for a horror film, which I'm not surprised by this because I think they've been drumming up the hype for this for a very long time. But I think people are super excited to see it. I am obviously, but I think that if you think about the kind of world we're in at the moment versus when 28 Days Later first came out, this is a well-established genre. This is definitely one of those, like 28 Days Later was you and I have talked, people debate about it, but the kickoff of the fast zombie thing, even though it's a Contagion movie, it's a Contagion movie. But I'm pretty psyched to see this, and I'm glad that they're getting such accolades and that they're hopefully the movie will actually live up to the hype, but apparently enough so that they're already locked in for these other sequels, which we're excited to eventually see our good friend Cillian Murphy.
Well,
So,
maybe this will help them secure that funding that the financing for the third movie, which we were talking about last time
oh,
also.
I think they will. I mean this is pretty impressive in terms of ticket sales. So
So it actually has gotten better advanced ticket sales than Sinners did, which we're going to be talking about today too.
Yep. And so they're throwing out some big numbers. They think it's going to be like a 34 million plus opening, which is, I mean, it's pretty big. So that's kind of cool. Anyway, I'm psyched to see this. I admit, I have not bought pre-sale tickets for this. So I'll have to add in my $20 or however much it is, $25, which is what like a ticket price is now.
Yeah, and then Deadline can post another article like, no, it's up even higher.
Yes, because
It's reanimated, the reanimated bump.
yep, yep. Um,
That's in a week. Crazy.
yeah. Um, but it also outpaced Nosferatu and I guess Final Destination Bloodlines, so that's pretty cool. Um, in terms of views for pre-sales, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Because that was only in the 24 hours that it went on sale too. So we'll have to see how this progresses, but pretty psyched about this. And but we're going to be talking about another horror film that actually like it did have hype. We saw like trailers for it. We were excited to see it. And it's been in the theaters a while because the reviews were so good. Did it leave and come back? I feel like it's never left the theater in my neighborhood. It's still been there for a while. But it got such great, fan following, and I'm pretty psyched because I'm very excited to talk about this with you, Stuart, now that we have finally seen it.
I don't know why it is still in theaters. Is it really?
Yeah,
Interesting. I think it's gone from near me, but then that's not surprising. Um,
it's still playing in New York in many theaters. So
hmm.
it's kind of this is a long run, and it's interesting that it's still in theaters and now it's on streaming, obviously. Um, but I now understand why. So this is Ryan Coogler's creation, and I'm really pretty psyched to talk about it with you.
Yeah. And Ryan Coogler, I don't know that I've seen any of, oh, Black Panther, I
You
guess I've
have
seen.
you have definitely seen his films.
But I think this just the Marvel stuff is what I've seen because I hadn't seen Creed or any of the Rocky stuff that he'd done.
Well, he definitely likes working with Michael B. Jordan.
Yeah.
So that's like he's a constant in a lot of his films. And the cast for this is pretty impressive. Cinematography in this film is by Autumn Durald Arkapaw. And music, he also works a lot with Ludwig Göransson. So that this has been so he has some constants that he likes to use, and music plays a huge role in this. So it doesn't surprise me he worked with somebody that he really trusts and that basically is able to put his vision into motion. So let's get into it. What did you think of the cast?
I liked Michael B. Jordan twice. No, this his cast was incredible. When I saw Delroy Lindo show up, and I
Oh
didn't know
my
he was going to
God.
be in. I was like, "Oh my God, he's
Yeah.
there."
Yeah.
Yeah, this was an incredible cast. Somebody that we remember from Lovecraft Country is in this too. Wunmi Musaku, playing Annie. But you got Michael B. Jordan, you got Haley Steinfeld rather, who does a really good job. Miles Caton, I don't know how you say his last name, but my goodness, the pipes on this
Oh
guy.
my gosh. Yep.
Buddy Guy is even in this movie, which is kind of crazy because that guy is not an actor, but he does a good job.
He did.
And
And
then
also Haley Steinfeld was in True Grit. Do you remember her from that?
I don't. I remember her from the Hawkeye TV show from during COVID. That was pretty good little show.
Yeah, but she was that's I think the first thing I ever saw her in was True Grit, and she's pretty incredible in that if you haven't seen that. And yeah, Buddy Guy, I was like, "Ah, that's like pretty cool."
And then I
That,
also think honorable, more than honorable mention, but like, wow, kudos to Jack O'Connell
yep.
playing Remick, who does an incredible job as the big bad,
Yep.
and his little clan friends who are both musicians. So they just bust out these performances. I didn't actually read if Jack O'Connell is also a musician. But the little performances by the vampires are some
Oh,
of my favorite parts of this movie
and
too.
they're so creepy.
Yeah.
They're really well done. But yeah, so him and Lola Kirk.
Lola Kirk and Peter Dramatis,
Yep.
who are those two are actually in bands, I think. Like they play music and act.
Yep. And then also Lee Jun Lee, who is Grace Chow, and she's amazing. Really, really good. Although we have to talk about something she does that uh anyway. And then also Saul Williams plays uh Jedediah Moore, who is Sammy's father. And that also like was like a pretty amazing role and powerful role. And
Hmm.
uh,
Omar Miller as Cornbread is a very familiar actor too. He's played football players in the past and a few different kind of performances that I recognized him from. And then Jamie Lawson as Perlene, who is a
yep.
fairly central character. I mean, but also kind of sidelined in a weird way through halfway through the film. We can talk about it.
Hmm.
We got Yao as Bo Chow, and then various other folks. First of all, are you gonna get the soundtrack to this or like listen to it a lot?
Yeah, I mean it's an incredible soundtrack.
Yeah.
And music plays such a massive um part in this. I would also say it's kind of a cast member if you ask me. Um,
And that's made very clear also by the introductory voiceover,
yep.
which is about how there are certain people, certain music maker magic people who can uh heal or they can heal people but also can attract evil. I don't know that we ever saw any healing going on from the music, other than like the dance party type of healing, the emotional mental healing.
That felt like some healing magic.
It just would have been cool. I don't know, maybe not. Maybe it would have been silly to have some some guitar licks start to stitch up wounds.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
I don't know. That'd be
I
a whole
I
different kind
think
of
it'd
movie.
be more spiritual healing than
Yeah.
anything else. Um, and I think, oh, I should also we going back to the two vampire cohorts for Remick, Peter Germanis is one of the I was like, is he in that group? But it is. He's in a band called July Talk, if you've ever heard of them.
No.
But they are, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Um Anyway, but yes, so the music is a healing thing, but it's also a dangerous thing because it can attract the evil in the world. And um, I think that they use like it's constant in this film after the opening sort of table setting monologue about this. What did you think of how they edited in terms of time here? I thought this was pretty powerful and successful.
Time, meaning what, that it's all in one day?
No, no, no. That you get to see um sort of the first cut is really you flip back to it in the last part of the movie. So the first part isn't that of Sammy coming in to the
Yeah,
church.
it's Sammy goes into the church and then his dad tries to get him to renounce evil.
Right.
I don't know that I did need that. I felt like that didn't have to be the way the film opened. I'm guessing I don't want to show my hand too far too fast, but there I don't think this was the like there were issues that I not issues, but there were little bits with this film that I was like, that's okay, but I also don't need that to go that way.
Well, so channeling Kyle here. So part I think of what happens when we don't exactly know when this particular scene happens. So Sammy comes in, he's obviously been through it, and he's got like the neck of the guitar in his hand, and he's been all like scratched up and whatever. And it gives really the audience a really big hint about eventually what's going to happen. And then they flip back in time and sort of almost rewind the day. So what I would say is that for at least for me, it gives you a really big hint that, you know, obviously not even hint, but it's like Sammy is a main character here, and you kind of don't have to worry about him because you do see that he eventually ends up okay, right?
I guess. Although you don't know that that is the final sequence of the film either. The just because he
You
walks into
don't
the church.
know, but there is a little bit of a,
You know he survives until that moment, but you don't
yeah,
know anything about after that. But yeah.
true.
There's some weird vibes about like his dad, who's the preacher, sort of giving him a really hard time for, inviting in the forces of evil through his music and trying to get him to commit to a life of uh piety, that and trying to get him to drop the neck of the guitar, which he's clutching as that scene ends. And then we go back a day before, one day earlier. And I didn't know that this was Dawn. I guess it's obviously Dawn because then he's out there picking cotton and singing, and then other people show up to the field, and
Yeah. And
then
they know, like they know he's a musician. They're giving him not a hard time, but they're trying to like, hey, like what are you gonna do? And there's all like a little bit of mystery surrounding it, but he's definitely a very well known. I would like it feels like he's got a little bit of a like celeb status in terms of his music already.
yeah.
So they make that pretty clear, which I thought was kind of cool.
Did you recognize Miles Catton
I didn't. You mean from the initial scene?
from anything else?
I don't think so, but
This,
he's
I
really,
believe, might be his first real actor. What's Little Big Shots? He's a backup singer for Her, the
oh,
musical artist Her. Um, and I guess he was on a variety show of like, so this is his first dramatic role.
yeah.
And they're not really letting him emote too much in these early scenes. I guess when he goes home and starts playing with his mom and waking up his siblings, there's more to his performance. But he has this beautiful voice. You can tell just in his speaking voice, he has a beautiful voice. Um,
Does, but he also has a presence. So that's the thing that really struck me, even in the initial scenes, like, and it's very specific in how you like see differences in how he interacts with people. So the difference between how he is interacting with people when they come up to him in the field and the difference between when he gets home and he's interacting with his family are two incredibly different things. And same thing with his dad. So, I think, like, I actually, like, even after the first opening scene, I'm like, wow, who is this? Because he really is impressive.
we immediately can tell he's a good guy. Like he's nice to his mom. He's nice to his, well, he doesn't really interact very much with his siblings, but they all live in a pretty ramshackle house and they all appear to work on this plantation as sharecroppers. And he is looking for his guitar because he's finished his work for the day even before the sun has come up. And when he realizes it's not under his bed, so he goes to the church and interacts with his father, who is preparing his sermon. And there you get a lot of the sense of tension about between his dad and him because they have different ideas of what his future should be.
They do, and it's also interesting because his father's view and knowing how much that guitar means to him, and it's used a little bit as a weapon. So that's
What are you saying? Spoiler alert.
well, no, I mean a weapon by his dad.
I know. I'm talking. Yeah.
I wasn't being no, that was
Wow, HH cutting to the end.
Woo.
Yeah, but yeah, totally. It's totally like a lever that his dad is using to try to manipulate him. And it's really like that's one of the most interesting parts about this whole movie and this story is the relationship between blues music and the church, or at least there's this family and this one pastor's perception of what music is. And also there's a conversation between Smoke and Sammy later that also um is quite interesting. It like makes you wonder about where Ryan Coogler saw the moral of the story.
Yeah,
Uh,
because it's there's a lot going on here with family dynamics and trauma and what form that
that-
trauma takes.
you're not kidding. There is a lot going
Yeah.
on here because a lot of these characters are interconnected in
Yep.
ways. They do a lot, but like they at least talk about how they're all connected. But then I don't know. The movie is not long enough to really do it serve a service because even between Stack and Mary, there's just so much history that is certainly it's alluded to, but it's hard to really. I feel like I could have done with a miniseries on these characters. You know.
Honestly, yeah, I would watch that. Um, but I did like how Ryan Coogler was really one of the things that I do like about what he does is he doesn't hit you over the head. There's a lot of things that are implied or ways that he drives the narrative and the storytelling without getting overly like he doesn't have to explain it all to the audience. A lot of it is inferred even through just like small little interactions. So we see the interaction between Sammy and his dad, and that reveals an enormous amount. And it's not like it's not a super dialogue heavy scene. And then when we flip into the scene with Sammy and Smoke and Stack and the scene in the car when the whole discussion about Sammy's dad comes into play, and you
Hmm.
learn so much about Smoke and Stack's dad and what happened there, and not all of the story. It's just you get enough from it that you already know where they're coming from and why they've been these sort of like they support Sammy from afar and the things that they're concerned about, like, the asking how his dad is and if he hits him and all and like how he's treating him and all sorts of stuff. And it's not like it's just really well done. So it's well written and well acted. And I really enjoyed, and they did this with like every kind of character interaction. There were these kinds of things that make you as an audience member want to know more. So.
We've also had a scene kind of before a lot of this where we get introduced to Michael B. Jordan's characters, Smoke and Stack. One of them, early on before you learn their names, which is a few scenes to go, honestly. The way you can differentiate the two of them standing next to each other is red hat, blue hat.
Yep.
And the fact, honestly, let's talk about this performance by Michael B. Jordan.
Mm.
The Smoke and Stack are immediately discernible because of the way he's portraying them. And maybe this is just like, yeah, basic acting. Maybe normal people, like regular actors, are can do this. But I felt like this was such a great performance.
Yep.
The way that Smoke is this very serious, hard kind of stony demeanor, and Stack is all smiles. I mean, granted, he also has a gold thing on his tooth that helps you be like, oh, that's Stack.
Hmm.
I just found them very easy to tell apart, mostly through the way that they spoke.
Hmm. He did an amazing job. And it was easy to differentiate them. I was glad to have the hats, obviously from the visual afar
Yeah.
piece, but to be able to identify them. But he did an incredible job. This must have been exhausting to do. Um, so,
Yeah, he had twice as many scenes as everybody else in the movie.
yep. So,
So pretty cool. This scene though introduces them, and then they also we see that like the central kind of set for the film is introduced here too, which is this old mill, and they buy it from a guy named Hogwood. And throughout this interaction and this purchase, there's a lot of threatening going on.
yep, there's a lot of threatening going on. And I will say, the choreography, and again we know it's not actually two people, so but I really love the way you see in this scene how Smoke and Stack work together and they don't even need to say anything, and there's just like an undertone of menace from Hogwood, which isn't, but it's an undertone of menace covered in some what sounds like relatively benign, like small talk, but it's not at all. And
Hmm.
there's like an enormous amount of racism and just it's pretty dark in terms of and but I think very, you know, like indicative of where they've grown up and that they know exactly what he's doing and they're calling him on it. And
Yeah.
their sort of reaction to it is immediate but not angry. It's very calculated and coordinated, and it's just very cool how it kind of plays out. And I mean, again, and I do think it sets the table for later in the film, and it isn't very surprising what happens later in the film because I think it all the signs are here with like big red signs basically being
Yeah.
like, hey, this is
I
some
uh,
warning.
with those signs being there, but I also appreciated Hogwood saying to them, like, the clan doesn't exist anymore. Don't, hey, what are you guys talking about? It all is all undertone.
Mm,
And whereas, you know, Smoke is all overtone, rather. He's just like, if you come back here, I'm going to shoot you.
yep.
And Hogwood is like, no need to be like that. Uh, and he, you know, he's calling them boys and this sort of stuff, which kind of continues throughout the film too. Uh, which I'm just remembering Mary calls Sammy boy at the train station, and that doesn't make a whole lot of sense given
Yeah.
revelations about her character later, but it does make sense from the perspective of the filmmaking.
Mm.
Like they're trying to make us not understand where she's coming from at first. Okay. But that's a pretty good scene at the mill. These guys pay Hogwood apparently in cash because he looks in this bag and is like, "Wow, you guys have a lot of money." And then they go and pick up Sammy from church after he's had this conversation with his father. His dad tells him, "If you keep playing with the devil, he's going to follow you home,"
Mm.
which leads Sammy to really feel bad about everything that happens for the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
Until I guess the very end, where he doesn't seem to have too many reservations. Um, so yeah, here we have that conversation in the car, with Sammy and the twins, where they're you know they've been in Chicago. They kind of say it's just Mississippi with tall buildings. It's not all that, Sammy, even though Sammy is saying he wants to go there to play to be a traveling musician, basically.
Right. But what he's specifically talking about is the racism. So he basically says, "Oh, you can go and you don't have to worry about all the things that we're having to worry about down here." And they're like, "Nope, that is a fairy tale." And it's interesting because they talk about, again, they give you these little like breadcrumbs about what they've been doing in Chicago. And it's really so well done in terms of these characters and how they interact. Like they definitely have a history here in this town. They have a reputation in this town, and you see it in every interaction they have. And it doesn't need to like hit the audience over the head with it, although sometimes it literally does, just depending on whether it's smoke or stack you're dealing with. But it's it's like they have come back, they have a history, but people have been hearing a little bit about what they've been doing in Chicago too. So they have these reputations and these stories following them. So I just thought that that was just a great, again, great acting, great storytelling, and not necessarily getting into the entire history. You can learn all you need to know from the interactions that they're having in the present day.
Yeah, and the rest of this first act, they kind of split up with Smoke going off to town to get supplies for their they're going to open the mill into a juke joint tonight, and it's going to be their old grand opening. And Stack and Sammy go into town to find performers, basically.
So, what did you think of the aspect ratio changing? Did you notice it? I did
Not
notice it.
not at all. When
Ah.
did it change?
Well, it changes a few times throughout the film, and this was what we talked a little bit with Kyle about it.
Yeah.
But
I'd forgotten about that conversation and then did not register it at all.
Well, this is really funny because I ended up watching it with Bill, who was immediately like, "Oh wow, that ratio just keeps changing." And I was just like, filmmakers and photographers, so that was just kind of funny. And
So
so
once he called it out, were you able to see it going on?
Yes. Oh no, I hadn't. Okay, so this is the thing. I noticed it, but I wasn't sure what I was noticing. I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." And then, of course, that's what it was. So it's almost like it expanded. And if it had been, this was supposed to, I think, be seen in like IMAX or whatever, but it would like make it seem like a lot taller and in some parts and wider in other parts.
Okay.
So it's supposed to really, I think in the theater probably would have really helped with you being immersed in the whole experience. And then I would say specifically IMAX, it probably felt a little bit different. Definitely, you're gonna feel different watching it there versus at home. I mean, we have a big screen and projector, so maybe that's why we noticed it a little more.
As the, I'm scrubbing it right now, like looking at and I could, it's mostly in letterbox, I guess. I don't know what the resolutions are, but then every so often, like the introductory scene where he walks to the church
Yeah.
is taller.
Yes. So
The
that's
scene with the Choctaw is taller.
yeah.
The crazy dance scene
Mm-hmm.
is one of those too. So interesting. Like it seems very strategic.
Yeah. So yeah, and again, like this film, we talked about it just in watching some of the trailers before. This film is beautiful. The colors are beautiful. The whole the setting is the colors, the saturation, where they choose to use them in different ways. Um, it's got a lot of depth to it in terms of like it just feels like a very like rich visual experience
Mhm.
overall. I will say that I didn't appreciate the snake part. Like,
Yeah.
it was rich, all right. I had to look away. You know how I feel about snakes, but um, that wasn't fun. But no, it is a gorgeous film and like the costuming, every bit of making this like to me a very cool like fairy tale, almost like a horror fairy tale was pretty cool. Um, so I think that also helped with the immersion into this world.
What I liked about this opening or the first act, also with them splitting up and going to take care of different tasks, is well, there's a oneer when he goes to meet Grace and Yao. Sorry, Yao's the actor. Bo Chow. Um, did you clock that?
The Oneer?
Yeah, where they walk across the street to
Oh
get
yeah, it was
Grace.
amazing.
It's a nice one.
I love that it follows the
Fir-
daughter
First Lisa and then Grace. Yeah.
Lisa, and then it follows Lisa, but then you have Grace coming out and it's facing Grace. It was really well done. And again, this just sets like the all of the scenes, the sets, the town, like all of the details. There was such care put into crafting this world. You
Hmm.
get a sense of this town and you get a sense of their place in it. Um, this is and just even in the little interactions, like he's debating with Grace just about making the sign and their negotiation, but he gives you a little tease about this, about how he feels about this before when he asks this girl to watch his car or his truck, and he basically tells her to negotiate up, and you should always do that. And then we get to see him negotiate with somebody who knows how to do that with him in Grace. I just thought that that was such a really fun way of sharing more about his character, but also about their relationships.
Yeah.
So that was just really so much fun to watch. There's just such a great little world building and character building and relationship building without getting too far into the details. But they have obviously known each other for years and years and years, and there's sort of a seamless um like re like like re-entry into this world for him where he's like he's back in it, you know? So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, it is nice that it's really nice how close they feel. Like Grace and Bo are like they're cautious a little bit around him because he did just shoot two guys in the street outside their store for trying to
Yet,
steal from his
yet
truck.
they don't seem very surprised by it. Did they
Like
take it?
nobody is that surprised about it. You can
Yeah.
hear, and if you watch the subtitles, you can hear some of the white customers in the store across the street, which seems to be the white side of the street, talking about how that isn't something that they want to happen in their town, is random shootings in the street. But it's very strangely not a huge response to the shooting of two men outside, even if they are just shot in the leg. Uh, but yeah, I really like the haggling and the negotiation stuff, and it also paints some context and contrast for later. They're kind of very easy with all this money. This scene and the one where Stack is negotiating with Delroy Lindo's character Delta Slim, and how much they're going to pay for these various goods and services, and they are being extravagant with their money, right? But then there's a fairly long conversation that happens in the second act about how they actually are going to be bankrupt any minute. Like they're
Yep.
just spending everything they have
Yep.
in this first act, and you get the scene, you get the sense that they're rolling in cash, but it is also short-lived. And I like the fact that that turn happens also. Um,
Yeah. And what their plan is, because that's their, you know, this is a little bit of sleight of hand, sleight of hand, just to this is what they're doing, and I don't know. And it's also interesting uh, the commentary from some of the people who know them about it, right? Like there's commentary like, oh, where did this come from? How did they end their responses to that? I especially liked Annie's commentary about it. So I thought it was because she has their number more than anybody else, I'd say, or she definitely has Smoke's number. So
hmm.
that I thought was kind of interesting that they are able to fool a lot of people. Um,
Yeah, but the relationship of Annie and Smoke is obviously much more intense as they are. I mean, they were parents together, right?
they were,
Yeah.
but she's.
But yeah, she is an insightful person from top to bottom because she is also like a spiritual woman, but also is Smoke's partner or was at some point.
Yeah. Um,
And they're running into all their old wives and girlfriends in this first act too, because at the train station you've got Sammy and Stack trying to recruit Delta Slim, who is there playing
mm,
harmonica, and it's a fair amount of negotiation that has to happen because he's kind of a jaded man, is old Delta Slim, and does not want to cast his lot in with the Smokestack twins, kind of accurately saying, "You guys aren't going to be around. I've been going to Messengers every Saturday for years, and I don't think your place is going to be around in in as many years." But
right.
a bottle of Irish beer. And I thought this was an interesting thing to show too, is like the novelty of a beer bottle with a cap that like held on to its carbonation
Yep.
in 1932 in Mississippi, how that would have been a head turner. And I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah. I like that too. It's also the whole um the whole his whole commentary about the fact that he doesn't think their establishment is going to make it, but the undertones about maybe why. That this is really a hard world. And there's just, we saw it from the very beginning with I keep calling him the wrong name, Hogswood.
Hogwood, yeah.
Hogwood. Just the under and overtones of racism in this world for them, and that they are in it, they're like spending all this stuff, they know that maybe this is short-lived, but they even talk about amongst themselves whether they should try to open that day or wait or whatever it might be, because they only kind of have one shot. but there's just so much working against them. And so that's kind of interesting, just them talking with this older musician about it. And then, he's just sort of like, all right, I'm in because of all of this. And, you know, he thinks about it and then he's fully in and on board. So that's kind of interesting, just that what is revealed in that whole scene between them is really, again, it sets the table for later on. And then how they're kind of gathering all these people to help them in this endeavor and not like, and much I'm sorry, what is his name in the film? Oh, he's so good too. Delta Slim. Um, the reluctance of people, like, because Smoke also wants Annie to be involved in this. They're on board, but they're also skeptical because of Smoke and Stack's reputation, and definitely the trouble that is clearly associated with them that we kind of figure out later on, right?
I
Or
wasn't expecting Smoke to ask Annie to cook at their shindig because she's like a witch.
yeah,
I don't know.
they
That came out of nowhere for me. Like, oh, they've had the like, you're the mother of my baby and our baby died, and you're also like a spiritual healer. Oh, and you're gonna cook at our big party tonight. So cool.
well, I mean,
Um,
they also have Grace doing things too. So I guess
but
they
they
all,
that is at least like just a transactional sort of thing. Like they even negotiate out a good price, $15 or $14.50 to make a sign, um, not including all the catfish and stuff that they're buying from Bo. That one at least makes, I mean, I think Grace and Bo like Smoke, and so they're willing to do this work because they're also happy to go to the party and they're having a good time there later that night too. So that one makes a lot of sense. But Annie's a little more curious. And then also at the train station, you've got Perlene interacting with Sammy because he plays a little impromptu concert or like at least
yeah.
one number with Delta Slim. And Stack gets up on a milk crate and says, "Come to our thing tonight."
Mhm.
These two are going to be playing there. And that introduces two more characters, which are Perlene, a married woman who doesn't really hide her interest in Sammy very well, or nor he in her. And then also Mary, and this is where we were introduced to Haley Steinfeld's character. And this is confusing because she kind of comes up, uh she looks like a white lady, and and that's kind of, what we understand about her is she's a white lady in this scene, and she goes up and she has a very frank conversation with Stack about some private times that they spent together. But he is also quite rejectful of her. Is that a word? Rejectful? Probably not. But he quite brusquely sends her on her way, and it seems like they have a lot of history. It's not good. And Sammy, I think, is very uncomfortable about this whole interaction.
Oh, Sammy is definitely uncomfortable about this whole interaction. And it's quite fraught. And again, it's like all of this though, I think contributes to the very complicated past that Smoke and Stack have in this town. Their connection with the town, their connection with all the people. With Annie, it's very interesting though, because clearly those like she has been through she and Smoke have been through tragedy. They do clearly love each other, but she is very honest, but also it's like she knows that some of the things that they do are like completely bad news and she's worried about him. And so it's like she agrees. It's almost like he asks her to go and help because he wants her there, but like doesn't really know how else to ask her. And she agrees to do it, but it's not like she knows this is a bad idea, but she's gonna do it anyway.
Yeah.
So
I
it's
think
in,
everybody doing business with Smokestack Twins knows that there's a
yeah, yeah.
certain risk that comes with that. We also get introduced to this idea of the Mojo bag for Smoke, which is as his witch, Annie has given him a bag of medicine that he wears around his neck. and it's to and she basically takes credit for the fact that he's still alive after all of his adventures in World War One and in Chicago. Uh, though, they have this conversation about how she couldn't save their baby, but she has saved him. And I thought that was quite touching. And that you might, yeah, there's some stuff in the third act that you might wonder could be attributed to the Mojo bag or just to the bond of brotherhood. I enjoy this first act a lot. All this like build up is a lot of
Oh
fun.
yeah.
Yeah. We also pick up Cornbread with Stack and Sammy and Delta Slim, and there's a scene and a story from Delta Slim on the way to get Cornbread about how he sees all these guys on a chain gang and talks about how he knew them all, and ultimately it's a story about more Jim Crow stuff and how so many of his good friend Rice was lynched. Um, and it's you learn more about why Delta Slim is quite as jaded as he is.
Yep. And I think that that's a little bit of the point of some of this is that there's, yes, there are risks associated with smoke and stack, but they are also establishing this thing, this juke joint for their community. That this is for them, and this is, something that despite the risks, people are on board with. And so I really like that makes sense to me that they're trying to establish this thing, and the way they establish it is actually by going outside the lines of like they do have to do these things because that's the only way to survive in this particular world. This world is not fair. It's incredibly cruel, and the deck is stacked against them. And so people are willing to take that risk for that bit of freedom to have their own thing. So I actually thought that that was kind of just telling like how all the characters that all the people in this community that they're meeting up with, while they're viewing them, there's definitely risks involved, and there's certainly, they have a very specific reputation. People are still on board with their vision. So that's, you know, just like a very telling thing. And it really does set the stage for what happens later on in the film.
Yeah. We then we see a scene of Grace and Bo leaving town to go to the party in their truck, saying goodbye to their daughter. And then we cut to one of these different resolution or aspect ratio scenes where clearly a vampire because
Yep.
he is on fire-ish and it's still sunlight out, but he walks up to a cabin.
And okay, so this part I am like, hmm. And did you notice that? I mean, they've got like the turkey vultures that make a couple of appearances in this film. Like they show them earlier, kind of circling over the field, and now they show them kind of hanging out, or they show them a little bit later hanging over the house. But yeah, if you were to see somebody smoking like this in this way, would you let them into your house? I'm just saying,
I
it
mean,
seems a
if I
little.
was dumb enough to be a member of the Klan, maybe I
Oh,
would.
yeah. Um, and I do think that this is sort of like you don't really feel like you see that, and there
You're
is a
like, good, yeah, good riddance.
yeah, there's that.
Except that they're going to become vampires, so
Right,
it's
right, right.
actually not that good.
I'll admit to you, I was actually surprised that that happened because I didn't, you know, but but anyway,
I
that
think there's some interesting backstory here. It's kind of like the beginning of The Thing, where you've got the Norwegian guy, in the helicopter chasing the dog. You know what I'm talking about?
yeah,
This I feel like is that scene for this movie. This is Choctaw are actively hunting this vampire, and I think there's a whole story about maybe his last coven that we just missed. You know
yeah.
what I mean? Like that's kind of the vibe I get. That the Choctaw vampire hunters have done a number on this guy, and so now he has to start fresh. That's my head canon.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. Uh,
Um, I also feel like I was actually hoping that this group of vampire hunters would show up later.
Kinda, yeah, me too. That would have been
I was
they seem to know what they were about,
that's
which
I was really like, are they going to come back?
Yeah. But the sun was going down, and so they had to peace out. They were really close to just finishing this off, and you get they really took it up to the edge because the sun was actively going over the horizon, even as they're like knocking on the door, and the guy who is at the door is very, unfazed by the woman holding a rifle in his face. But ultimately, he's like, "All right, I hope you didn't invite him into your house. Good luck."
Yep. And they're
But
kind of like, all right, see ya. And yeah. So, and then this is the first time we actually see the full-on vampiness of Remick. And it's very disturbing. I will say the cinematography here, especially as Joan is walking through the house to discover this scene. I mean, I think we all know what's about to happen for the most part. It's pretty standard vampire lore stuff.
it's a
But
far cry from Nosferatu, but
it is. However, just how dark it is in the house
oh
and
yeah.
the anticipation and how honestly, like just you're feeling almost like smothered by how close it is and immersive it is. It's like super disturbing. So I did make my husband watch this with me, and as most people know, he's not really into my kind of films. And this was like the point where he's like, I really hate horror films.
I mean,
And
this wasn't that scary. I know. So
so
she starts screaming as her husband stands up from a pool of blood, and Remick is just like, "Oh no, don't cry, it's fine," kind of talking to her like a baby. We
no,
don't even see the culmination of that. We don't see her getting attacked, but
no,
and
no,
we
but
nope,
just
yeah,
it's the anticipation of it,
yeah,
like
yeah,
what's in the box, kind of a thing.
yeah.
So I just thought that was pretty funny because I was just like, oh, this is such a great and successful way of kind of her walking into this scene. Um, so I again I thought maybe um I would like the vampire hunters were pretty. I actually loved that they were like, yeah, okay, you're gonna go back into your house, and we gotta go take cover because it's nighttime. I was really glad that they didn't do the thing where they were gonna have them like ignore her and rescue her or something.
Yeah.
They basically told her what they told her. She didn't believe them, and they're like, well, you're on your own. See ya.
Peace
Uh,
out. We got to get back to somewhere safe where we can't invite anybody inside. Yeah. So and also the whole invitation thing. That there's a scene of that negotiation from Remick, or the guy we learn is Remick later, and the two clans people, where he is pleading to be invited in, and that's a recurring theme in the story here too. But yeah, the Choctaw don't wait around; they get out of Dodge. And we also see how quickly these things turn, because this discussion between the Choctaw and the woman couldn't have been more than a minute or two.
mhm.
And so since the guy was let into their house, it's been moments, almost like, 5 minutes maybe. Sun is still like, at that point on the horizon. It hasn't gone down a great deal. So between the guy getting let into the house and the conversation at the front door, Bert has been killed and turned and stood up and is a full vampire when he turns to look at his wife.
Yep. So they established that it can happen honestly within minutes. And also, they're definitely following pretty much standard vampire canon. So
Yeah,
the sunlight is an issue, inviting them in, the
garlic.
garlic. Well, we don't know that till later, but
Oh
still.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
But so
but
far, we have a sense that these are traditional.
yeah, I mean the one thing I would say just in terms of like the transmission, it's just a bite and it seems like a bite anywhere, so there's none of they have to drink the vampire's blood. So it seems to be and we find out later on that it's like, the saliva or whatever. It's like any bite transmits the vampirism. So but I just thought that was it's interesting how closely they stay to just general standard vampire canon. They don't touch that. And then the music thing is also in some vampire lore that it's like got a powerful thing with them. So that's another thing. So, but yeah. So then we know that these are, when they reappear later, we recognize them, and they're super creepy.
Yeah. But
So,
we have, I think this is basic. That's the end of Act One in my mind. Act Two
yep.
is the beginning of the party at the juke joint, which we haven't really seen it get transformed. That was a deleted scene apparently, but they basically they buy it in the morning and it's ready to go. I mean, there's not much to do, but they have to put up lights and stuff. They do have a scene of them attaching electricity, and then basically folks are showing up to party.
Yep.
You've got Annie is at one bar, Grace is at another bar we see later, and there's a whole long conversation that's going on in here about whether or not they should take wooden nickels from plantations. Well, first of all, I'm sure there are people in this country who don't know that that was what was going on, that white landowners were paying people in non-American money
Yep.
that they that would be like difficult to spend potentially in places, and it's only spending you can only spend it at the company store basically.
Yeah.
It's a
So there's,
total racket,
and
but so they,
you
Smoke is having a really hard time with this. He feels like it's charity, but then Annie and Stack are arguing like these guys need to feel welcome here. They seem to be taking a longer term view, but I think Smoke has his finger on the pulse of their budget, which is to say they are they're running out of actual dollars
yeah.
and they can't afford to just take all of their business in plantation money. And this conversation goes on throughout multiple cuts because outside in the party, other things are also happening. I just thought it seemed like it was the conversation goes on between Annie, Smoke, and Stack for a long time while other things are happening in the bar.
Right. And I mean, I think that this whole scene is revealing because it actually gives the audience more of a sense of what Smoke and Stack are doing here, and the fact that what they have and what they're spending so much, and they will. I mean, they're gonna go bankrupt, and but money and the way that the wooden money is being used as like control so that people don't have actual freedom, that it's a way to control the fact, like, because if you can only spend it in this way, that that they're really kind of like stuck, and that includes like trying to establish this thing that is theirs, that is for their community, is incredibly difficult and hard. But they have to, they actually have to have the customers. Like they're very, Smoke is really upset about it because it's like, well, you know, we can kind of call it a success, but we're gonna have to start to actually have real money coming in, and it can't all be coming from them. It's just a hard scene, and honestly a little devastating when you realize like what this is going to mean, and that they're kind of like floating this and hopefully it'll succeed, but it feels like it might be destined for failure. It's just a very hard thing to establish. So, and this ties into what Delta Slim was saying earlier to them. And so it just brings so much more context to that. And I thought that this was, again, just such a powerful interaction between these characters, and revealed so much and explained so much that wasn't revealed before, but it was implied before. So, it's definitely, you just have so much more of a sense of what's on the line at
Yeah.
this. So,
There's a lot on the line, and they are justifiably concerned about their future. They outside, Perline has arrived at the party, which was not necessarily expected, but also very expected, the way she looked over her shoulder at Sammy as she walked away. And then Mary is also walks up, and Cornbread initially, who has been hired to be their bouncer, initially is like, you can't come in, but then she reminds him of their shared history, and
hmm
he's like, oh yeah, it's you, Mary. And they have a hug, and she comes right in and basically starts, Sammy and Perline, who have an interest in one another, are talking, but he sees Mary and understands that this is going to be a problem for Stack and goes over and speaks to her. And she takes him to the bar and after she finds out that he's the cousin. of Stack and Smoke, tells him a little bit about her history, which is that basically her mother, who was, I believe, half black, raised Smoke and Stack, or at least took them in for some period of their childhood. And Haley Steinfeld, unbeknownst to me, also has black heritage, which I had no idea. Because I was wondering, like, can a white actress be playing this role like La La Land style? But I think she's got all the credentials.
Right. And she also establishes here that she knows exactly who Sammy is. Like she knows him from when he's like a little kid.
Little Sammy.
He just doesn't remember her. And then it then goes into like this then leads into Sammy's kind of music debut to like both he and Perlene tear up this place, but
Oh,
his
hers comes, well, yeah, later, but
first
it's
comes later, but his establishes it and it establishes we've gotten little hints of how amazing he is,
mhm.
but this whole scene is just really beautiful, phenomenal. Again, like I really hope to see this film nominated for a lot of things. I know horror doesn't generally get that, but I think there's so many things that you could award this this film for. And this scene I think is one of them. Costuming, choreography, music. It shouldn't shock anybody that his performance just as a vocalist, because he has a gospel background and some other things, and he's been featured on obviously like some big stuff, but it's really well done.
Yeah, this scene turns into something else. It kind of definitely blends genres and it kind of breaks all the walls, literally of the mill all burned down during this sequence. But then the voiceover also plays again about the magical music people, and as he's singing, then suddenly you've got like electric guitar, you've got a DJ spinning records, you've got people doing crip walk, you got one lady who just keeps twerking in a few different sequences of this scene. And then you also have like Chinese opera people and just a regular ballet dancer thrown around in there, and then mixed in, and also some like tribal performers, and mixed in with the other people who are just at the juke to begin with. It's a pretty crazy scene. Did you find it immersive? Did you like the way that that was done?
Yeah, I thought it was incredible, and it just blended all these different genres. It blended time. It really visually was just really just a gorgeous, gorgeous scene. And it was very powerful. And so, and it did exactly, I mean, it's not shocking to me that it attracted uh, the vampires, but it's just really, really, he's like summoning everything in this, and it's just who he is, and just an incredibly compelling and emotional moment, I think. And it like, I really love how just visually it takes you outside of this whole world. It's a transporting scene for all the characters. And he is the orchestrator of all of that. So I thought it really established the what the risk and attraction was for Sammy in this. So, and how it basically stops everybody. So that's I don't know. What did you like? And the soundtrack of this is really impressive, and this was just like this pinnacle moment in the film. I also think it's definitely the pinnacle of joy in the film, and so this is, it brings you all the way up before it's going to come crashing down, right? So,
Yeah, I really also, I mean, as far as pinnacles of joy, I think there's one other, but it's
there
when
is.
when the audience knows things are going sideways, so maybe we can't experience the joy as much. But when Perlene sings
Oh
her
yeah.
her song about the pale moon, that's a killer track, and everybody seems to be having a really good time, with the exception of whoever's outside getting killed.
But I guess that's why I'm saying that
Yeah,
this other
yeah.
scene is the pinnacle because we don't have that yet.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
but everybody inside listening to her song and dancing is having an amazing
oh,
time. So, like
and
those people who are still alive are having a good time at least.
yeah. And that is apparently Jamie Lawson who plays Perlene. She is singing
Yeah.
and so it's actually her singing, and it is.
Well, they stacked this cast with performers, right? Because apparently Haley Steinfeld performs a song in this music movie too, which I don't know where that could have been, but the song called Dangerous, which do you remember a song called Dangerous?
I don't, but I I guess I missed that one.
Yeah.
But
But so after the barn burns down, per se, we do have that scene of the three vampires now illuminated looking at it like it's the menu and but then we see that the mill is actually not is still intact. All three of them have instruments, which is quite interesting.
Mhm.
I think we can, knowing what we know about by the end of the movie, they're here because Bert knows about this party or knows about something happening here because of his clan affiliation, right? That's why they've come to this.
Yeah,
Also, it's because of hearing Sammy's music, but they get there so fast that I think they were already on their way, don't you?
I think they were on their way, and they know about it because his father is Hogwood, right?
Uncle, but yeah.
Or uncle, rather. So that's how they know. And then they reveal some things about what Hogwood or what was going to happen later. So yeah, I think they were already on their way, but then obviously Sammy's magical music powers made it even more attractive to them.
Yeah. Yeah, you get that. You get that. So inside, you also have Sammy and Perlene hook up. And Stack overhears them in what I call now the sex room because they're not the last people to hook up
Man, everybody just wants to have sex in that room.
in that room specifically. Uh, so, Sammy proves himself in some way to his cousin and to Perlene, I believe, in that scene. Also to Grace. Grace also listens at the door for a minute. Everybody's impressed, I think.
I don't
Uh,
think Grace is really impressed. She just kind of rolls her eyes and walks away,
I
but
thought she was smiling, but yeah,
she
okay.
was smiling, which is like but
At the front door, Cornbread sees these three vampires walk up and immediately sends for the twins, which is smart, but not because they're vampires, but because it's three white people walking up to their party, and that probably doesn't bode well. And Remick, Joan, and Bert all introduce themselves. And there's a weird trend or theme with these vampires where they talk about equality and peace and love, like they're hippies.
but they're super creepy about it.
Yeah, it's a weird sort of theme throughout where are they progressive vampires? Like, what's this about? And with Remick being an ancient Irish person, perhaps we're not sure really about his backstory. Like, where did he get this philosophy from? Is this something that just comes with the territory of being a vampire? I don't know. But they're
Well,
they're talking the talk.
he does talk. I mean, a little later, he mentions some things, and so you get a little more insight into that. But it is unusual for these basically um, for them to want entrance, especially since this is very specifically um, a place for the Black community and for them. And so for them to be wanting entrance, they feel very skeptical of that. There is a lot of skepticism. And I think there would be even before they start their creepy spiel, they feel very culty, and even how they're moving is a little creepy. And then when they do their song, it's like, I don't know. I can understand why they are very much not wanting to let these people in. But later, when they're talking about it, because they basically kind of deny them, or they fully deny them, when they're talking about it, they're like, look, and you get a real sense of the world that they're living in. And they're like, look, they come in here, what if something happens? Then we're all in trouble because they'll say that something happened in the juke joint, and they'll use it as a reason to shut us down. They'll use it as a reason to do even worse things. And so that is like an overt commentary on what's happening. And again, this is like kind of building this whole understanding, which I think has been very apparent throughout. I mean, we've seen what the setting is in the town, and that things are very much segregated. We saw the interactions with Hogwood. We, heard about the plantation money. There is just this is an incredibly, like, the amount of risk and danger that Smoke and Stack have, even in having this establishment, is tremendous. And I feel like that is made more and more clear as like the the tension of this film like reaches its pinnacle. So, I don't know that you necessarily need them to be vampires to show this, but even without knowing that, it is a tremendous amount of like fear and risk in this particular like setting, and for them to want to be coming in to like join them is something that is something that's dangerous for them.
Yeah.
um so they just don't know that they're actual monsters and they're
There.
the real reason it would be dangerous. So
Yep,
it's
it's not because somebody would hit on Joan. It's because they
right,
would all get eaten.
right.
They do a little performance to try and get in the door, which is also kind of good. Like Stack is definitely enjoying the music. They play this creepy song called "Pick Robin Clean," and it's all about like how much meat you can get off of a robin, I guess. It's catchy, and one of the greatest things about the way that this movie deals with these vampires is they are all like marionettes, sort of. They all know the same stuff, and all their movements are perfectly coordinated. I thought that this was one of the most compelling parts about the movie.
Yeah, they have a hive mind. And I wasn't certain that that Joan and Bert were musicians before this happened to them. I was wondering if maybe they got that power or that knowledge from Remick, who is a musician.
Yeah, that isn't clear. There's a deleted scene that if you watch this on, I rented it on Amazon, and it comes with some deleted scenes as extras.
Oh,
And there is a scene of Bert playing guitar in their house before Remick comes
oh,
to the
okay.
door. So that from that I know that he was already supposed to be at least owning a guitar, and I guess all the stuff that they have on them is probably from their house, right? Because Remick showed up without a shirt. Um, so maybe they were musicians before. Certainly, the two actors playing these people are musicians, and they make quite nice harmony. But that performance is not enough because Annie's in the back of this. Also, is weird. Like everybody runs to the front door to find out what's going on, right? Smoke and Stack are there because it's their place. Annie comes over because I don't know why, and so does Mary, which actually kind of complicates the scene a little bit because they're like, wait, why is she allowed in? Annie immediately defends her, saying she's family. But that was kind of interesting. But ultimately, Smoke, for the reasons that you outlined, is like, no, go find a white bar. And so they're like, okay, we're gonna leave, but we're gonna walk real slow, and they do walk comically slowly away. And in fact, they've not even left the parking lot by the time Mary goes outside a few scenes later to find them.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting, right? Uh, so we've have then two different conversations happening. Smoke and Sammy are talking upstairs about Sammy's future, where Sammy is saying, "I'm going to leave the plantation behind just like you did," and Smoke is saying, "I've never met a happy musician. You should play church music, and that'll be a happier life for you." Conversation takes a bit of a turn, where Smoke puts a gun in his face. Uh, be like, "Hey," because Sammy, tells him to. He's like, "Look, if you." I forget exactly the ultimatum, but he's like, if you're not going to let me leave, you might as well just shoot me now. And Smoke pulls out a gun and points it at him. I think it's trying to scare him straight moment. I think Smoke is also doing the math of just how much hot water he's in at this point, because now he has an account of, or he has some sense of that this venture is probably not going to succeed,
Yeah.
that all the things he did in Chicago are probably going to come back to roost. And so he's trying to coax Sammy into a different way of life, but also he recruited Sammy to come and help him with this. So I don't know, I feel like it's a bit of a mixed message from his cousin.
Yeah, it's a little mixed here.
And then also the other conversation that's happening is between Stack and Mary, who, as we remember, were romantically entangled. They've had some conversations about he he wanted to keep her safe, and that was why he was sending her away and being cruel to her. He made sure perhaps that he got married to a white guy and has money now on a farm. We don't actually ever see her family, any sign of them. Um, but they're still into each other.
Yeah, and again, this is the commentary here. It's not like he does love her, but there is danger because everybody assumes that she's white. And there's specifically danger to her, danger to him, and he thought that this was like a better way to keep her safe. And so that's again another revealing scene between the two of them, but they obviously love each other, and that doesn't have the best consequences for them later. Or
Well,
maybe,
she's trying to be so helpful. I thought this, it's tragic because even as they're having this conversation, you're like, "Don't do it, Mary. Stay in the juke." But she volunteers to go find the three white musicians because they'd said they had money to spend, and
yeah,
she's just trying to help them out, Smoke and Stack. But I mean, he gives her a gun. She almost pulls it off.
almost. Although this was a pretty well done scene too, I have to say.
Yeah, man, this is good.
From a horror perspective, they do such a good job at like waiting to kind of reveal all, I guess. So I really loved how this like the creepiness here, even when she's like talking with them and they're indicating they know certain things about her and they seem, I mean, again, the vibe I get off of the three of these people, which makes sense, is just very culty and creepy and like they're saying the right things, but
They're
they're
finishing each other's sentences, though. It's like I don't know
yeah,
why she ever sat down on that log. I think she was just trying to be nice enough to like get them to come spend their money.
yeah. Um, yeah, it was yeah.
She
Uh,
takes one or two heartbeats too long to get out of there though, because as soon as Remick has red eyes and pointy teeth, she does not quite get up as fast as I would think she should. She does point a gun at them and says, "You better go," and starts to walk back inside, but and you see him take off, like fly into the sky behind her, and that's where the scene ends. And then she comes back into the juke so fast that you're almost like, oh, maybe she just got away.
Yeah. But that little scene where they show just a glimpse of him starting to fly.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, this isn't good. And again, yes, you're like, oh, is she okay? But we know how fast they can turn, but we're not seeing any like evidence of blood on her at this point or a bite, like we saw with Bert because Bert was pretty messy when he turned. So I do think there's a deliberate like a little bit of a deliberate not
Yeah.
misdirect, but you're kind of hoping for the best for her and wow. And when they invite her in, you're just like, oh no. So that's just a really interesting wrinkle there that just
Yeah.
you're kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop. So there's like an enormous amount of tension. At least I felt it because I was just like, oh no, this isn't going to end well for Stack. So when
Yeah.
she goes into the room with him. Uh,
It's also the nuance of inviting, asking to be let in, because Cornbread isn't, I mean, he is kind of blocking the door,
mhm.
but she's like, hey, if you let me in, yada yada. But then she has a bit of an extra strut to her walk as she walks in, so then it's pretty clear. Cornbread also takes this opportunity to go outside to relieve himself and gets Delta Slim to watch the door. Cornbread apparently feels the need to walk 100 meters into the forest to pee, which is why he is what happens to him. Really, really way too far. Inside, Mary immediately goes up to Stack, kind of explains what she gives. Does she give him the gold coins? I feel like she does. Um,
She does.
and what's her explanation for why they're not inside with them?
Um, I forget what she said, but she gave some kind of an. She said they were waiting for. Did she even say they were waiting for an invitation?
I don't recall how that went. But
Yeah.
she's like trying to change the subject by getting him alone at this point.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then she does. And, you know, I, I gotta say, because I forgot that she saw the drool
Yeah.
on Remick before, and now we see the drool on her. But instead of being like, that's just creepy, um, Stack is like, yeah, bring it on.
Yeah, and that's pretty nasty. The drool was weird. It was too thick. Also, the blood is kind of weird in this movie, but I think it's on purpose. But it's like the blood is very viscous.
Yep.
Um, So I just looked at the subtitles in that scene. She gives him the gold. He's like, "Oh, do you want to go out there and ask them if they want to do a song, or something, or if they want to?" He starts to ask her about what the next step is, and then she starts making out with him. So
Okay, so she's distracted.
yeah, she basically just distracts him and then takes him into the sex room, uh, for that element. Meanwhile, there's a guy with loaded dice. Well, we also see Cornbread get waylaid out in the woods. We don't, but we hear people whispering at him. We see glowing eyes in the trees, and we know what's happening to Cornbread. A guy with loaded dice has sliced the guy's face open, and Smoke has to like take care of this situation. Uh, and Perlene starts singing her loud song, or has started singing her loud song, Pale Moon, which is, like I said, everybody who's in the room listening to her sing and dancing is having a great time. But we already know, like, Mary's dead, Cornbread's dead, things are going badly. There's a guy whose face has just gotten slashed open. Things are going not well.
However, she is tearing up that stage and the dance floor is on fire.
Yeah.
And so this makes the whole tension of this scene even more fraught because, I know I wasn't sure what was going to happen with Mary here. I didn't know if she was going to turn into this like, I mean, I figured that Stack was done for, but I didn't know how quickly he would turn or whether this was going to just be like them. I thought they might just come out and start to like do their thing.
Mm,
So, I was really stressed out watching the scene. However, I will say Jamie Lawson as Perlene here, this is just wow.
quite the performance.
Yes, amazing performance. Um,
Sammy is sent to go get Stack and walks in on Coitus and then leaves immediately and then goes back and gets Smoke, and they walk in, and now Coitus is stopped. It's more like being killed.
yep. And
So
he is bleeding out.
he is done. Yeah, it's pretty clear that Stack is going to die. Smoke. These two, they've done this whole movie. They've shown these two working in such tight harmony that you know that this is going to have a huge impact on Smoke here, and it does. He kind of goes into shock. Um, he also, well, he doesn't immediately. What he does first is shoots Mary like 12 times, but she gets up and runs outside. This is one thing I don't fully understand about this film. She's been invited in. She doesn't have to leave. I don't, well, yeah, because Cornbread's the one who let her in, and I guess he's dead. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but
Um,
why would she leave? Why? She's invincible. None of them know how to deal with her yet. She could just go on a killing spree right now, don't you
true.
think? Yeah. And couldn't she invite Remick and the others inside at this point?
I think it has to be a human. I
I don't
don't
know.
think you as a vampire can do it.
Well, she certainly doesn't stick around. She runs out and she says, "We're going to kill you all," which is language that Annie picks up on later. She says, "We're going to kill you all," and runs outside. So back out into the woods. Um, and we've also had a scene of or Slim telling Smoke, "Yeah, Cornbread went to go to the bathroom 2 days ago, and I haven't seen him since." Uh, so they basically end the party at this point. There's been a shooting. Stack is dead. Smoke is freaking out. Bo tells everybody to go home, and everybody just walks outside. Except for, there are several people who stay inside, and I will say it wasn't clear to me how many of them there were really, even though there's several scenes of the people left inside the mill, because in the third act there's a scene where a few more of them seem to get killed than I was expecting to be there.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah. And also, I think some of the people that were going to go home get turned as well.
Oh, like we definitely see them all.
See them all, but
I don't think anybody gets out of there. I think
no.
because most of them are walking, or maybe a one or a few. There are some cars outside, so some of them have cars. None of those cars appear to be gone by the end. So, and there's a big crowd of vampires by the end of the movie.
Yeah.
So I think it's the whole ensemble. You just see them walking out of the parking lot and kind of scattering off. Um, and we don't see them again for a while, but eventually. Cornbread comes back. Grace and Bo decide to leave. Uh, and Annie is getting all these Annie's getting these vibes because she's like, wait, she said we are going to kill you all. She knows Mary well enough to know that she's not saying like we as white people. And she, because she's a witch, she puts two and two together and comes up with what the problem is.
Well, almost. I mean, she thinks it's like evil spirits, but she isn't quite sure
Yeah.
until all this. And she's having to grapple with Smoke because she's like, we need to put that body outside right now.
Yeah.
And Smoke is not taking it, and she's like, okay, well, at least we will lock him in here. But she is very much in tune to what's that this is not normal, that this is something that's going to go very wrong, very quickly. And but she is kind of the Cassandra because
Hmm.
Smoke doesn't want to believe her. Everybody else is kind of looking at her, but thankfully they believe her enough-ish. But the confrontation with Cornbread is really interesting.
Yeah. Because he ambles back up to the door. Bo has left. Grace is still inside. They're like, we should go. We got to get home for our daughter. And we're not here to help them with some murder. So Bo has gone outside to get the car when Cornbread walks up to the door and asks to be allowed in. And people immediately are like, what?
Yeah.
Especially Annie. She's calling him on it. Um, what I'm like surprised by here, or not surprised, but I feel like in this scenario, in all this interrogation they're doing of why he's asking to be let in, I feel like you could have accidentally invited him in. I don't know. Like, that's my fear anyway. I'd be like, oh God, what can I say that will not accidentally be like, well, sure, let's talk about it.
Right. And also just, it, I was thinking they were going to go for it like someone would be joking, "Oh yeah, sure. Why don't you come in?" Like I thought that just because he's such a known person that one of them would make a mistake.
And he's acting so much like himself. And that's one of the scary things about, I think, these vampires too, is because they have all of their old knowledge and they're very clever. Like when people are asking him why he's asking to come in, he says, Annie, this is probably your fault because you gave me a bad sandwich. Or, Slim, shut up, you're drunk. Like he knows them, he knows their levers too.
Hmm.
But
Almost
ultimately,
works. It almost
it
works.
almost does. Well, honestly, it kind of works because he's like, well, then pay me what you owe me. And even though they know he's not okay, Smoke still reaches out the mantle or the doorway to give him money, and he pulls him outside. But luckily, Smoke has a very fast trigger finger and kind of shoots half of his face off.
Yep. I remember like as I was watching this, I'm like, don't give him the money. Don't put your hand out. Don't put your hand out. I actually said this out loud. And but it was so fast. It was really, again, really well done.
Yeah, I would have
Um,
just thrown the dollar bills out the door.
yeah.
Uh, yeah, it's tough. And then after they see Cornbread off, then suddenly Stack is knocking on the door of the sex room asking to be let out, sticks his knife through the door. Everybody puts their eyeball up to that hole, which makes me very uncomfortable, obviously, by design.
Hmm.
How was Bill doing during this part of the film?
Oh no, he was very unhappy with me to that we watched all this. Putting it into his head before we had to go to bed. So yeah, no, he was not happy about any of this.
The vampire Stack is also a very different version of Stack. So again, like Michael B. Jordan plays basically three characters in this film
Mhm.
because pre-vampirism Stack is like this happy-go-lucky kind of guy, and vampire Stack is much more angry and manipulative than at least the Stack we knew before.
And he definitely knows all the levers to pull
Yeah.
for Smoke, and it's really, oh, it's so hard. Um, and Annie keeps saying that's not him, that's somebody else. And same thing that she said about Cornbread. She's like, that's not him. And so it's a really hard realization for Smoke for Smoke to basically see this happen. And these two brothers have been united and aligned, and so this is a very clear delineation from that, and they are on two different sides at this point of the living and the dead. The vampires and the humans, and it's interesting some of the things that that Stack is saying to try to to try to win him over. But he does say something that I think, we won't get into this yet, but I like he basically said you're never going to be able to resist this. Like we have to be on the same side. Like this has to happen. And there's ultimatums that happen later. Like this is just not like it's basically not even a question to him that Smoke is going to join him in this. So, yeah.
Yeah. Luckily, we've got pickled garlic.
Yeah,
And Sammy does get a door knocked onto him, which probably didn't feel great.
nope.
And then again, even though he has just been doused in pickled garlic, Stack runs out of the mill instead of staying because he ha was already there. Like I don't think he needs to be invited in. Um, so that's curious why they keep leaving. And it happens a third time also in the third act, or it sort of does.
I think it's because they're trying to join the hive, and that they will be going at this as a group, and that's what it kind of feels like. And they show a little bit of that. It did feel like maybe there was like something deleted that we don't know about, because I kind of thought the same thing, but I thought maybe it's because they need to kind of join the hive, that it's hard for them to be solo. But then that doesn't necessarily play out. Maybe it does play out later because of stuff that happens. But that they can be separate. But yeah, and then we've got the face off essentially.
There's a fair amount that happens next. We're entering the third act of the film. Annie's giving a lot of exposition about what vampires are. We get a montage of garlic, wooden stakes, silver, and holy water, or at least the first two. I don't think they have any silver or holy water, but they have lots of garlic, at least a jar, and they have lots of stakes. And so they're making those. Left inside the mill again, it's Perline, it's Annie and Smoke, it's Sammy and Grace. She's worried about Bo, justifiably. And then there are, oh, and Delta Slim. And then there are at least two or three other people who I don't think are extras without speaking lines, but we only really see one of them in the garlic eating in a circle scene, which happens shortly hereafter. Because Delta Slim is talking about how many run-ins he's had with the devil and vampires who bit him everywhere except his neck. Just funny stuff. But then they find a body, or they think they do. They find a guy. It's the guy who was cut in the weighted dice interaction, and he's just face down on the floor next to a puddle of dark liquid. And they
Right.
assume he's dead. They're like, "Who killed him?" Well, we neither of the vampires that we know about did because they ran right outside. So they drag him outside, setting up, some other stuff. But when they go outside to dump this body out the front door, which is brave to do because they don't know who's standing next to the door or around the corner, then we have this amazing scene of the vampires a ways off, um, because you hear the singing, and it's like this Irish tune, and then you cut to it or you see what's going on, and it's everybody. Mary and certainly Mary and Stack are there, but then like 20 or 30 other people. Cornbread is there, and it's again this like puppeteer sort of vibe you get, where all these people suddenly know this Irish song, and they're all, and not all of them are doing the Irish dancing. Although I was thinking how cool that would have been if they were.
Yeah, and it's again, it's this like kind of frenzy, and it's terrifying, and it's just like terrifying Irish vampires. Like um it feels even more like frantic and frenetic and terrifying, just this whole dancing. And Remick is a really good evil big bad, I would.
Yeah, he's doing. Even yeah, I will leave that thought till the end. But there's these vampires seem pretty happy with what they've got going on too. At
Yeah.
least they love this song about Dublin.
Oof.
They're really into this song.
They are into this song in a way. It's again, it's creepy and culty, and like it feels like, to your point before, it feels like they're all marionettes that are being like their strings are being pulled by Remick. And so it feels like, yeah, they seem happy, but are they? And it's this collective creepiness about the whole thing. that is just and to me, this is the absolute opposite of the joy that we saw when Sammy was doing his number and when Perlene does her number, because it's like forced, like so there's like just a lot of themes about freedom, and this does not feel like freedom, right?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
feels definitely like everybody's being forced into this by Remick, because he is the ringleader and he's the head vampire here. So yeah, it is again well done, but it's so creepy.
Yeah. There's issues. Inside, when they go back inside, they're trying to figure out who killed this guy that they just dragged outside. And they all stand in a circle and eat garlic out of this jar. And it goes pretty well, except Perlene is like, I don't really like garlic. And they're like, better eat it anyway. And Delta Slam also has like a reaction, but those are both false alarms, just to make the audience think, oh my gosh, were they bitten off screen? It's pretty well executed, I think, even though it just kind of it's a time sink in a way, but
Hmm.
it's pretty good. And then they also the realization that the guy isn't even dead and that he was just lying in a pool of liquor
Hmm.
is
They try to save him, but too late. And this jump scare or this like
it's
Cor
just funny, right? Like this
yeah,
is
Cornbread like takes him out really quickly.
oh yeah, and so the guy wakes up and starts banging on the door, and you see Cornbread over at the Irish dancing, look over and go, "Oh, what's this now?" And then do you hear his footsteps, like the Foley work of Cornbread running up to him? It's like a boom, boom, boom sort of sound. I thought it was pretty great. But yeah, so here they open the door to look outside at what's happening, and several things start to occur in this scene, um, where I feel like they should have shut the door. If they had just
Probably.
shut the door, none of this would have happened.
Correct.
Maybe they would have figured out another way to get it to go. But because as Cornbread is killing this guy, Bo walks up and is like, Grace, I got the car. Let's go. I mean, it might have worked if it wasn't for Cornbread tearing out a guy's throat just like, steps away.
With Bo not even reacting to it. He's like, "Oh, that's just Cornbread doing his thing." Like his nonchalance about it is actually really, oh, it's rough. Poor Grace. It's a pretty um
Grace has, I think, the worst time in this
yeah,
film.
yeah.
Um, well, the whole family. I guess it's going to be Lisa who's going to have the worst time. So she doesn't, to her credit, doesn't go outside. She almost does a few times, especially after Remick walks over with Stack and Mary and Joan and Bert and starts to make a series of pitches. Uh, come outside for peace and love. Come outside for your daughter Lisa. Otherwise, we'll have to go to the store and kill her. And he speaks to her in a dialect of Chinese, which is crazy. There's Sammy. He's the only one I want. Send him out. And then Stack and Mary both also say, look, come on outside and life is going to be so much better after we kill you all. And it's pretty compelling stuff. Obviously, it's compelling enough for Grace, who is kind of sent over the edge by all of this.
Yeah, but they also pull a lever there with her that is pretty hard for her to resist. And also,
Impossible. Like, I don't know. I don't know any parent who would be okay with this situation. Like, nobody inside can really rationalize
no.
what is happening for her. Uh, not well enough anyway. Because Perlene's like, we just have to stay in here till sunrise, and she's like, wait, so my whole family will be dead, and then I can leave. So yeah, I do think for her, she's like, no, this isn't gonna work.
But I think we also have to talk about what they are offering. So they're basically saying everything else is great if you join us and die and but and while all the memories of everybody is shared and they retain some they're remembering, I mean, for obvious, like they have all these information and levers, and this is so entirely creepy, the things that they say to her. Grace specifically gets targeted in a like very deliberate way. Um, that like all of them have knowledge of Bo's relationship with Grace and have knowledge of her because of Bo, and knowledge of Lisa because of Bo. And so this isn't really freedom because they're not all individuals; they're marionettes. And so what they're offering, while it may sound like, oh, like they try to make it like it's not such a big deal, but they're monsters and look at what they're doing and look at their existence. Is that better? I don't know. So I don't know. It's like, I think that the struggle that Grace has to contend with and the damage that this does to her, it's a pretty powerful scene to see the struggle that she has to wrestle with in her head.
And I feel like you mentioned this early on, her act here, because basically shortly after this,
Yeah.
it's a pretty prolonged scene at that door where Remick says all these things, and I feel like I haven't even gotten my head around all of them. He makes so many pitches in such a short amount of time, and everybody else is also like, "Come on out here, or invite us in, and we'll just, we'll knock this out. It'll be good, and you'll be better
You only
off."
you only all have to die first, but yeah, it'll be great.
Yeah.
So great. And it's interesting how they change they if one thing doesn't work, they'll change their angle.
Mhm.
And they get, they try to sound reasonable or how it's great, and then they get more and more threatening to the point where they're like, yeah, we're just gonna go and kill Lisa. Um, but yeah, her grappling with these things in her head, she's a great actor, and I thought that, but this part, which part is gonna.
So yeah, eventually she loses patience and just says, "Why don't you guys come on in?" Yells it to the door.
Yep.
Because also she's just like after they shut the door in their face, the vampires all start singing "Pick Robin Clean" again. And she sees Yao outside, and that's enough to just be like, "All right, I can't handle this anymore." And she screams, "Come on in!" And then everybody knows that that's not good, and so they all start grabbing their stuff and lighting Molotovs. And
Yeah, but she's only got, this is my thing. Fine, I can see her going over the edge. She's only got one. She's only got one. I mean, they have their arsenal, but there's not enough cocktails there
no.
to do the thing, and it's
They're outnumbered. What she does is suicide,
yep.
and unfortunately for everybody else inside, it kills them too, most of them. So they would have been better off letting her go outside to try and fight them by herself. So I don't feel like, but I'm not gonna condemn her for it because I think what the pressure she's under is more than any human could manage
Yeah.
reasonably.
But then it all, it goes into the sort of the final like like ink you know
Yeah, this is the third act, the big fight.
this is the big finale, at least as far as the vampires are concerned.
Things go pretty fast here. Grace throws a Molotov. Remick bats it away in a pretty cool vampire move. But then she does stake one vampire who's on fire, but then she's on fire, and she
Mhm.
basically just holds the stake in him until he's dead and she's dead because she burns to death. It's kind of the most metal thing I've seen in a while.
Yeah, it's pretty insane.
It's
And
yeah,
yeah, and the rest of them are fighting the good fight. It's a losing battle, and they
like
know it.
three extras die in this scene where I'm like, where were you guys? Where did
Yeah.
they come from? Uh,
And then Annie discovers that if people hurt Remick, the rest of them hurt.
as soon as
So
she discovers that, she gets bitten by Stack, Steak, by Stack, and that's pretty bad. Obviously, that's like Smoke and Annie are both really upset by this.
right. But I mean, that's Stack's plan because he wants his brother and he to join him, and he thinks that this is gonna help that. And because like, what else would you do? Um,
Delta Slim tries to give everybody a chance to escape from the second floor by cutting himself. Oh yeah, that's the thing. All the vampires run out of the barn at one point.
yeah.
And I don't understand why they do that. But then he cuts his hand and they all run back inside to him. And he goes out in like the mob death sort of scene.
Well, fire can hurt them, so I think they were trying to flee the fire, but they were compelled to come back in because of his blood. So that they just couldn't resist it. And then Annie wins in her way because she basically tells Smoke, she's like, you gotta like, because she basically tells him that what the vampires are trapped souls. Like, so if you don't do the wooden stake thing, they're just trapped. And she doesn't want to be trapped. So she escapes, much to Stack's chagrin. And the rest of them, use the distraction of Delta Slim's sacrifice, sort of. But ultimately, it's only Sammy that ultimately escapes, and his jump off of this little out of this window is pretty rough.
Call that a jump? It was more of like,
Oh, whatever it was.
yeah, sack of potatoes out the door. Um,
Before seeing Perline like basically get taken down, and she tells him to flee, and he
yeah.
he tries to escape into the water, and the baptism visuals don't escape me with everybody all around and
Hmm.
Remick going after him.
Talking about how he misses all of his people, and Sammy can bring them back for him, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
That's part of this desire that he has for Sammy, but he's definitely hunting Sammy specifically because
Mhm.
back in the barn, Smoke and Stack are having this prolonged fight. Like you said, Perline has been killed. Uh, and Remick has been staked a couple of times, I feel like, at this point, but doesn't seem to be really doing the job.
Yeah, and he gets more and more monstrous. Like his hands are
Yeah.
crazy.
His hands have gone all extra knuckly.
Yeah, he's looking more and more evil. And then he makes some comments, why he is and why he thinks that this is a good thing. Um, he's got a sense of loss of his culture and oppression of his culture. He makes a comment about you know, that he said, like, there's this whole incredibly creepy scene where Sammy starts to say the
The
uh,
Lord's Prayer.
Lord's Prayer, and all of them start echoing because Remick knows this, and Remick kind of like hits him over the head with it and is like, yeah, that used to, the people who brought that to my people were thought it was, and I still found it comforting. And it's like this one last kind of ploy to get Sammy to join them, or to have some kind of reasoning for him to join. But Sammy's still not giving up, and he's gonna put everything into it. And um, does, like, even in the end though, he like the I don't even know the name of the piece of the guitar that he puts through his head. But it's a pretty, the special effects are pretty good,
Yeah.
and the reaction of all the other vampires, because they feel everything Remick feels, is pretty amazing. So that that is pretty gnarly, but it gives Sammy enough time so that Smoke can stake Remick.
Yeah,
And
but which means Smoke has the last time we saw Smoke when he was upstairs fighting his brother. His brother was unable to bite him because of the Mojo bag, is kind of the impression you get, but it might also just have been brotherly love, but
no,
probably it was the Mojo bag. But then so Smoke has the upper hand and he says to his brother, "I'm sorry I couldn't keep you safe," but his brother says, "But you always did." Then cut to out in the pond where we've got the vampire with the metal plate in his head. This is giving Smoke enough time, I guess. It feels like it's 2 seconds, but he has enough time to sneak through this whole crowd of zombie vampires to stake Remick for a third time, perhaps, which is apparently enough to do him in. And then also the sun has come up quite rapidly. Like it's very dark outside. And then as this scene is ending, suddenly the sun is coming up, and that's kind of what does in the vampires.
yep. Though it does take Remick a little bit longer, and he goes up in this like funnel of flame.
A tornado. That was a really cool effect.
It was a cool effect. We never see what, and this will play in later, but we never see what happens to Stack. And and then this leads into the scene that we
And
had.
Mary, wait, we don't see Mary run away like we do
No,
in the flashback either, right?
no,
She's just not there in these very final scenes. She'd
yep,
apparently buggered off at some point.
yep. And and then it leads us back to the beginning, which is basically Sammy going into the church with his dad and having to make a decision.
Well, him and Smoke pull a box out of their truck bed first, and Smoke is like, "I've got to take care of some stuff." It's not really clear, but I think we know
I think,
based on the conversations because yeah, at the door also the night before, Remick had been telling them, "Oh, this is the Ku Klux Klan Grand Dragon's nephew, and they're going to come back here and kill you all anyway, which is why you should join us. It was like just another one of these arguments to become a vampire. So now Smoke, I feel like with everything that has happened, he's like, okay, this is what I'm going to do now. It's an interesting take, but
Yep.
also he's just lost his the love of his life.
Yeah.
So, but then that he does tell Sammy to just take the truck, take the car, and go. And we do have that scene of Sammy arriving back at the church while Smoke sets up an ambush. The clan members arrive en masse, probably 20 or 30 of them. And a quick scene of Smoke exacting his revenge, but also getting shot in the process.
Yes, but he is rewarded because he he gets to see Annie and his baby again. And so that's a little bit of the like, all right, so sacrificing himself, um, and in some ways protecting his community, because they never intended to let him and his brother succeed, and that was pretty clear, like just in the conversations that happened the night before. And it's like, it's horrible that he's dying, but he is able to finally, hopefully, be happy in the end. And so it is an ethereal and beautiful scene because he has to hold the baby and he gets to do that.
I don't know that that wound was necessarily a fatal one. It's kind of
It's
lower
pretty
down. It could have
bad.
gone through some organs and whatnot, I guess, but it would have been a long death.
Yeah.
Whereas he seems to die quite quickly, but not before putting about 50 rounds into Hogwood.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah, but yeah, basically he has a nice send off, gets to reunite with Annie and baby, and that's him done. And meanwhile, Sammy and his dad continue to have this conversation about the church and the music, and it seems to be resolved with Sammy picking the guitar over family, plantation, etc. And we cut to an older Sammy with the facial scars of a man who's been sliced down the face by a vampire, who is played by Buddy Guy now. 1992 in Chicago at a club called Perlene's, which I
hmm
thought was a nice touch.
I did too.
And then you kind of get the credits start rolling. But then if you stick through the first 20 seconds of credits, there's a whole nother long, like 5-10 minutes of dialogue that happens.
Yeah, and I gotta say, Future Stack, the fashion, because it's like the 80s or the
It's
90s.
92. Yeah,
It
this
looks
is
rough. It
100%.
looks rough.
No, this
Um,
is great. This is great stuff.
yeah, and they, explain a few things, and that Smoke let him go as long as he would leave Sammy alone. I think that that says something. I mean, basically, both he and Mary survive. Even, they are now, I guess, free agents because I don't know how that works because Rummock's gone.
This is my question about the moral here.
Yeah,
We're
like
talking about how, oh, this isn't freedom. These vampires aren't free. They're all puppets and whatnot. But then these two are dressed in their cool 90s clothes with their lollipops and their stacks of bills.
right, and probably also infecting other people too, because it
Well,
doesn't like these vampires have a lot of uh willpower.
well, you say that, but they walk into this club, they don't hurt anybody. They have a conversation with Sammy. They give him a hug. They have him play some music, and then that's the end. They leave.
I know, it's weird. I want to know more.
Well, I just feel like it really muddies the water for me about
It,
vampirism. Is it actually cool? Like, should they have all gone outside and become vampires that night?
maybe only if the you kill the original one do they have freedom. I don't know.
Hmm.
But um but the thing is, like, Smoke knew that Smoke let him go. He had some reasons. And it is interesting that Smoke didn't go after Sammy, and even here, he's basically like, "You don't have that much time left," and they leave him alone. Because I thought, "Oh no, is this going to be like their final vengeance?" But no, they just like keep eating their lollipop and go
Listening to
on.
music. Yeah, he plays that same song, Traveling, that he was playing in the car. It's beautiful.
Oh, it is, yeah.
And it's very confusing. I feel like, yeah, it's cool and all to see that Stack and Mary basically got to live their happy ever after in a way as vampire lovers.
Hmm.
into, 60 years later, they're still looking amazing.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. It was confusing. I'm like, I guess they picked wrong.
Yeah.
I don't know. So that's Sinners, man. Play on words for our Smokestack twins, for Sammy and his love of the devil's music, the Ku Klux Klan, the vampires, not the Choctaw. Those guys were beyond reproach.
Yeah, I mean that's the one thing I do wish that they had done a little bit more with them. Like I was all along I was like waiting for them to make a reappearance and they didn't. So that's one sort of like dangling like unresolved thing that I would like to know more about. And I definitely wanted to know a little bit more about what happened to Remick before like them chasing him. They imply some things, but I just kind of wanted to know more about
Ah,
the
yeah.
vampire hunters.
I'm good with not knowing that. I think that's a delicious sort of unknown. Things that I feel like I would have liked to have seen more of were Perline. Her character felt pretty sketchy to me, like not very well fleshed out. She was there to serve a certain purpose for Sammy, but beyond that, it just feels like it falls down in terms of character development for someone who should have been more significant.
Yeah, I hear you. I think that there wasn't enough with her and she definitely, I mean, she was married, she shows up, she's compelled by Sammy, but we don't get a lot about her, in the same way we see with the other characters in the backstories. So I feel like she was one of the least developed characters in the film.
Yeah,
And
basically.
we even hear more about Cornbreads. You know, like we get stories about everybody else except really for her.
Yeah. Yeah, even Bo and Grace feel somehow more developed in a weird way. And they're also at the same level of participation. So overall, I think it sounds like you quite enjoyed it.
I did. I mean, I thought that it was, definitely a commentary, an obvious commentary on Jim Crow. And, you know, through the vampire pieces of that was like an interesting, like just a like nice little interpretation of all of this and a nice storytelling of all of this. Overall, as a movie, I thought it was a very successful horror film with these few little, always these little like things I want to know, but I don't think it would be a good movie without some of those things. I thought it was really well done, beautiful. I'm a huge fan. So I see what um
All the fuss
yeah,
is about.
all the
Yeah.
accolades are about. So
Well,
um,
I need to go and listen to the soundtrack and see if it stands up on its own, without the pictures, the moving pictures to help it out.
mm.
Yeah, I liked it too. I do think there was a couple of elements to it that I still have questions about, but overall super entertaining on a few different levels. And I can't wait for Ryan Coogler's next picture with Michael B. Jordan times three.
Same. Maybe it'll be about the vampire hunters.
Next weekend is the 20th, 21st, 22nd. Do we want to just do 28 years later?
I think we should.
Okay. So for the very rare opening weekend podcast recap of 28 years later, join us again next time on Reanimated. Meanwhile, holler at us about Sinners, your feelings about it, um, at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com, and find all of our other episodes online at reanimated.podbean.com.
Yep. And it's still possible to see this in the theater, so I would definitely recommend doing that. I am maybe going to try to do that on my own, um, because I think it would be a very good experience. So if you can possibly do it, if it's still playing in your area, I definitely recommend that, instead of just streaming it, because I think you'll miss a few things. But in it, I hope I want to hear what people think. So until next time, ciao.
Bye bye.